let's now take a look again at my video games essay. And I'll go through a few of the citations, as in, you know, the citation appears in the text in parentheses, usually with the last name of the author, sometimes the title of the piece. And that means that at the end of the essay, you have a works cited page where you can find that author or that piece. And if you wanted to, go on the internet and look it up for yourself as the reader of this essay. So, as you probably noticed last week that my essay has a lot of citations. You only have to have 3 for the assignment. But I wanted to have an essay that was long so it could have a variety of citations that you could look at to kind of use as models for how to do your own citations. All right, so let's look at the essay itself. So here we are at the beginning of the essay. Let's move down and find, I'll probably do 3 citations just to go over the process with you. I see a couple there, but let me keep going. All right, let's choose this one. So I talked about this exact paragraph in the other video, and this is a good example of a point of evidence or a source that's from out on the internet somewhere. That will add, power and add support to your basic thesis. In my case, arguing that video games are beneficial. Okay, so I went out on the internet and found a scientific study that when it did its research, it found there is no proof of the assertion that a violent game will cause substantial increases in real-world aggression. So I thought, great, this is exactly the type of, evidence that I would want to bring into my essay. Why? Because it directly challenges the conventional wisdom about video games, or what might be called maybe a paranoia about video games, which is that if you play a violent video game, you become a more violent person in real life, right? So do you see how, in a sense, I'm arguing against this sort of stereotype or slightly naive conventional wisdom about video games by bringing in this statement? And that makes sense for my overall thesis of arguing that essentially video games are good, not bad. Okay, so we have this in the text. And then right here is the, citations have 2 parts. There's the in-text part here in parenthesis, and then there's, what this links up with in the works cited page at the end of the essay. So let me just take you through what that would be from the point of view of a reader. A reader is reading along. They come to this sentence, they read it. They think, oh, okay, here's a good point of evidence for the author's thesis. And they notice here's 2 names in parentheses and a page number. So in MLA format, what that means is if you go to the end of the essay, which will be a few pages, you know that there will be what's called a works cited page. In this case, it goes on to more than 1 page, right? But essentially, it's the list of all the sources you're using. And so notice of all these sources on the works cited page, in fact, the very last one is the one that we're looking for, right here. Well, let me bring this up a little. So notice that there are the 2 names that were in the in-text citation that we saw back on page 3. Those are the authors of the paper about internet gaming violence and how it might correlate to real world violence. And then we have, notice, just to go through exactly how this is done, Dimitri's last name, right? So this is a person called Dimitri Williams, but we list alphabetically, we say Williams, comma, Dimitri. The way when attendance is being called in a very formal circumstance, I might be called Foster Andrew, even though my name is Andrew Foster. And then the other author of this paper, we just list the name in a normal order. And then I'll quickly go back just so we can reacquaint ourselves with the in-text citation. See how it says Williams and Skoric? Let me go back down. So we have Williams and Skoric. And then we have a period. And then we have the title of the article that I quoted from in quotation marks. Internet fantasy violence, a test of aggression in an online game. So full title in quotation marks with a period. Then we have the website, right? And then we have, in this case, these are the same, right? But the second part is the, quote, publisher of the website. Now, when you hear the word publisher, it sort of harkens back to the days when most of these citations that people would be putting at the end of their essays would come from books, right? So you would have an author name for a book, you would have the title of a book, and then you would mention the company that had published the book. And that lets you know, it would let you know which edition of the book you were pulling the quote from, let the reader know where you were getting the quote from, etc. Now in the internet age, we have the website, and then we have the name of the sort of owner or whoever the publisher is of that website. Okay, so if we look at this one right above it, the website would be gamepolitics.com. Notice that these are in italics, right? And then the publishers, the company that owns the website gamepolitics.com, is called Entertainment Consumers Association. Okay. So we have the name of that publisher or the owner company, comma, and then the date of publication. So, here's a good example. I couldn't find the exact day in June 2005 when this was published. So I put June 2005, and that's fine. Notice here I was able to find an exact date that this was published. So try to find, if you can, and this is one of those, not every article on the web is going to have a date available as to when it was published. But try to find it because it's good for the reader to know, right? If this was something published in 1905 for the first time, obviously there was no internet in 1905, but just hypothetically, you would look at this information a little differently than it having been published in 2005. If you, to make it more specific, if you had an article about, let's say, the war in Afghanistan. Obviously, if it's from something in the 1980s, the phrase the war in Afghanistan has a different meaning. It would probably be referring to the Russian war in Afghanistan, right? But post September 11th, the war in Afghanistan has a meaning in the United States. So, it's useful to just be able to put kind of you can think of it as putting a pin on a timeline as to when a certain piece of writing first appeared. So then we have this word web, and what that means is the name of, or the medium that this piece of writing was published on. So if all three of your sources are from the internet, all you'll need to do is write web just like this. And notice if I go up to, let's see, obviously most of our information is going to be from the web these days, but here I had one book referenced here, right? So notice it says print, and that means it's, a book or a magazine or an article in a physical journal as opposed to being on the internet. All right, back to the citation we were working on. And then lastly, there's another date. And this is the date that you yourself looked at the article. So say right here we have 27th of June 2011 was the date that this article was published on the web, and then I looked at it on the 24th of February 2012. So again, why is that important? Well, it's particularly important in the age of the internet because web pages change, don't they, in a way that books do not. You could have different editions of books. There might be differences between, say, if you read Lord of the Flies from a 1950s edition when it first came out versus an edition that was published 5 years ago, there might be a few differences in the text. There shouldn't be, but there might be a few differences. And that's why, again, if you're citing a book, you would say the publisher, and you would want the reader to know which edition of Lord of the Flies you are reading. But in some sense, books are more stable than the internet. So this, whatever you're looking at on, say, this website, gamepolitics.com, it could be that exact article has been modified since I read it on the 24th of February 2012. And this, in a sense, gives me as a writer a little bit of cover, because if it was changed in 2014, then I can say, oh, well, I wasn't trying to be purposely dishonest. It's just that it changed after I wrote this essay. And I would have proof that that's when I looked at the particular page. So, you will always know what day, and you could put the last day of your, the day you were working on your essay here. It doesn't have to be exactly the date you first looked at a certain article, but you want it to be around the time that you wrote your essay, right?